The sky was dark, but not with clouds. It was black, like the emptiness of space had reached down to cover the city. The streets were empty. The usual sounds of human life were gone, replaced by a strange, low hum that seemed to vibrate through the ground. Mara walked carefully, her boots silent on the cracked pavement. Every shadow felt alive, every corner a potential threat. She had never been alone like this before. Not since the first ships had landed. They had come without warning. No announcement, no negotiation. Just enormous, silver ships that blocked out the sun, hovering silently over the largest cities on Earth. Governments had tried to respond. Tanks, jets, missiles. Nothing worked. The weapons that humans had spent centuries developing seemed to melt against the alien technology. Mara remembered the news feeds at first. People laughed at the idea of invaders. Then the laughter stopped. Now, the world was quiet, too quiet. Mara's fingers tightened around the handle of the small plasma cutter she had stolen from an abandoned lab. She didn't know why she kept it. Maybe it was comfort, maybe hope. Or maybe it was the only thing that could keep her alive if one of them found her. The aliens, they didn't move like humans. They didn't need to breathe. They didn't seem to sleep. They only watched and collected. Mara ducked into the ruins of a library, the shattered windows letting in streaks of cold moonlight. Books lay scattered on the floor, their pages fluttering in the faint breeze. She paused near a pile of overturned shelves and listened. The hum had grown louder, deeper. Her heart pounded. She knew they were near. Not inside, but close enough to sense her presence. Then she saw it, a shadow moving across the far wall. It was not human. It had no face, no eyes, just a smooth, reflective surface that seemed to distort the light around it. Mara froze. The thing tilted its head, or at least what she thought was a head. She couldn't be sure. The air felt heavier. She could almost hear her own blood rushing in her ears. She wanted to run, but her legs felt frozen. The shadow moved again, faster this time, sliding across the floor without touching it. It was intelligent. She could feel it studying her, learning her patterns, predicting her moves. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. Mara didn't breathe until several long seconds later. She knew it would come back. They always did. Outside, the city was silent except for the hum that had become a constant in her life. Mara had learned to survive in the shadows, but the loneliness was unbearable. She missed the small things, the laughter of children, the smell of rain on concrete, the sound of music spilling from a cafe window. Now, memories were her only comfort. Memories and the faint, stubborn hope that humans could fight back. She pulled a small, cracked tablet from her jacket. It was the last communication device she had found. The screen flickered weakly. A message flashed, barely readable. If anyone is alive, meet at Sector 12. Midnight. We have a plan. Mara's pulse quickened. A plan. Someone else had survived. Someone else was thinking of fighting. She left the library carefully, sticking to the shadows. Every alley seemed longer than it was, every sound a potential alarm. She kept reminding herself to move slowly, breathe slowly. The silver ships hovered above, their lights scanning the streets below. Mara wondered what they were looking for. Food? Resources? Or just humans, like her, who refused to be nothing? As she moved toward Sector 12, Mara noticed something strange. There were marks on the walls, small scratches that glowed faintly in the dark. She recognized them from the abandoned lab. Symbols, maybe a warning, maybe a map. She followed them instinctively, hoping they led her to others, to safety. Suddenly, the hum stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. Mara froze, every nerve on edge. And then she heard it, a soft, clicking sound, coming from all around her. Something was moving above her head, along the rooftops. She pressed herself against the wall, heart racing. The clicking grew louder, faster, like hundreds of tiny feet moving in perfect harmony. And then she saw them. Small, shadow-like figures leaping between buildings, eyes glinting in the faint light. They were fast, too fast to track, but Mara noticed one thing: they hesitated when they got near the glowing symbols. Something about humans, something about the marks, confused them. Mara realized she wasn't as alone as she had thought. Maybe she had found a weakness. Maybe humans still had a chance. But she didn't celebrate. Not yet. She had to reach Sector 12. She had to survive until midnight. The night stretched endlessly, each second heavier than the last. Every step could be her last. But Mara kept moving, driven by a stubborn, unbreakable thought: humans do not give up. Humans fight. And somewhere, in the shadow of the abandoned city, the first spark of resistance was quietly, dangerously, beginning to grow. Mara moved through the empty streets with caution. Her eyes darted from building to building, scanning for movement. The small figures she had seen on the rooftops the night before were gone, but the memory of them made her chest tighten. She didn't know what they were, only that they were fast, smart, and dangerous. But for the first time in weeks, Mara had a goal, a place where humans might still be alive. Sector 12. The city around her looked broken, abandoned, yet somehow alive. Graffiti on the walls seemed to tell stories now, not words of anger, but messages: keep moving. Don't trust the sky. They watch. Mara ran her fingers over one symbol that glowed faintly. It pulsed like a heartbeat. The marks were everywhere, guiding those who knew what to look for. Mara had learned to read them like a secret map. She reached an alley where the walls closed in tightly. She heard the faintest whisper of movement above her. Instinctively, she flattened herself against the wall, holding her breath. A shadow darted across the roofline, quick as a heartbeat. Mara's pulse spiked, but she stayed still. The figure paused at the glowing marks, almost inspecting them, before vanishing into the darkness. It seemed the symbols confused them, slowed them down. Mara's mind raced. Humans had left something behind, something that could help. The tablet in her pocket buzzed. She pulled it out and saw a new message, barely readable: Sector 12. Entry after dark. Bring nothing that can be traced. Trust no one outside. Mara's fingers trembled. Someone was alive. Someone had a plan. Hope flared inside her chest, sharp and dangerous. She moved faster now, carefully avoiding the silver patrol drones that hovered silently above. Their beams of light swept across the empty streets, and she ducked into shadow whenever one passed too close. The city felt like a maze, each turn a possible trap. Mara's mind raced with questions. How many humans were left? How many had already been captured, or worse? And who had sent the message? Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost all meaning since the first ships arrived. Mara finally reached the outskirts of Sector 12, a part of the city that had been heavily fortified, though now in ruins. Crumbling walls and broken barricades suggested someone had been here before, fighting back. She spotted a faint glow coming from a doorway, just a sliver of light in the overwhelming darkness. She approached slowly, keeping low. As she neared the entrance, a voice stopped her cold. "Who's there?" Mara froze. The voice was human, wary, and sharp. She raised her hand slowly, showing she carried nothing but her small bag. "Mara," she whispered. "I'm looking for the others. The plan." There was silence. Then, cautiously, the door opened wider, and a figure stepped out. It was a man, tall, with dirt-streaked clothes and eyes that had seen too much. "You got the message?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," Mara replied. "I want to help. I don't know how, but I want to fight." He studied her for a long moment. "Few humans are brave enough now. Most just hide. But maybe we can use that to our advantage." He gestured for her to enter. Inside, Mara found a small group, huddled together in the shadows. They looked tired, but alive. And they looked at her with the kind of cautious hope that made her heart leap. A woman stepped forward. "We've been waiting for someone like you," she said. Someone fast, smart, and willing to risk it. Mara felt a surge of purpose. This was what she had been searching for. This was why she had survived the streets alone. The man led her to a table covered with maps and small, glowing devices. "The aliens are strong," he explained. "Faster than we can run, smarter than we can hide. But they have one weakness." He pointed to a symbol that matched the marks on the walls. "These. Old human technology. It confuses them. Slows them down. If we can use it strategically, we might have a chance." Mara leaned closer, studying the glowing marks. They pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "How do we use it?" she asked. The man's eyes glinted. "Carefully. We lure them, mislead them. Make them think the city is empty, then strike when they least expect it." He paused, looking at her. "But to do this, we need people who can move fast, who can think fast, who can survive the night alone. You're one of them." Mara swallowed hard. Fear and excitement battled in her chest. She had spent weeks alone, hiding from the shadowy figures that stalked the streets. And now, finally, she had a purpose. Something to fight for. The group began preparing. Plans were whispered, supplies checked, strategies drawn. Mara felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but also a fierce, burning determination. Humans were small, fragile, and slow compared to the invaders, but they had something the aliens didn't. Creativity, courage, survival instinct. As the night stretched on, Mara looked out the broken window at the city. The silver ships still hovered, silent and cold. Somewhere beneath them, countless humans hid, waiting, hoping. And somewhere among the shadows, the aliens watched, unaware that the first sparks of resistance were beginning to light the darkness. Mara clenched her fists. She didn't know if she would survive what was coming. She didn't know if anyone would. But one thing was certain, she was no longer running. She was ready to fight. Night fell like a heavy curtain over Sector 12. Mara checked her equipment for the third time, her small bag, the plasma cutter, and a few glowing symbols she had learned to use. Every item had to be perfect. One mistake could get her killed. She could hear the hum of the silver ships above, faint but constant, a reminder that the invaders were always watching. The man who had welcomed her, Elias, crouched beside her. "Remember," he whispered, "we're not attacking them head-on. We're testing. Learning. If they notice us too soon, it's over." His eyes were sharp, calculating, the kind of eyes that had seen loss and refused to blink. Mara nodded, gripping the symbols tightly. The group moved like shadows through the ruined streets. Mara's heart pounded with every step. The glowing symbols were placed carefully at intersections, behind broken walls, under rubble. Anything that could confuse the alien sensors. The little marks pulsed faintly as they moved past, a heartbeat in the darkness. Mara marveled at how something so simple could have so much power. As they neared the first patrol route, the faint clicking sound returned. Mara froze. The small shadow-like figures were moving again, their tiny forms darting across the rooftops. She held her breath, counting slowly in her head, willing them not to notice the humans below. The patrols were different tonight. More precise, faster. The aliens had learned from previous encounters, adapting quickly. Mara could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, like electricity before a storm. One wrong step, one sound too loud, and the shadows would descend. Elias motioned for the group to split. Mara took a narrow alleyway, placing the glowing symbols as instructed. She moved quickly, silently, her eyes scanning every window, every roofline. Then she saw it. One of the small shadow figures paused, its head, or what she guessed was a head, tilted toward the symbol. It hesitated, confused. Mara held her breath, hoping it would stay distracted long enough. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed down the alley. Mara's heart leapt into her throat. One of the team members had dropped a piece of equipment. She looked around, panic rising. The shadow figure froze, then vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Mara exhaled slowly, shaking. They were lucky this time. But she knew luck would run out. They reached the main square, the heart of the abandoned city. Here, the alien patrols moved in larger groups, more coordinated. Mara's group set up a series of symbols, forming a web of light and confusion. As they worked, Mara noticed a glint in the distance, a reflective surface, catching what little moonlight remained. It was one of the silver ships. Closer than they had thought. It hovered silently, scanning the streets below. Mara felt a wave of fear, but it was quickly replaced by determination. This was their first real chance. The humans might be small and fragile, but they were clever, quick, and relentless. Elias gave a small nod. Mara activated the symbols. The lights pulsed stronger now, spreading outward like ripples in water. The small shadow figures above froze, then began moving erratically, confused by the sudden surge of energy. They collided with each other, stumbled, and retreated from the glowing paths Mara had created. For a moment, victory felt possible. Mara ran, weaving between symbols, her movements fluid and precise. She could hear the whispers of the others through the shadows, coordinating, striking, moving. It was a dance of humans against invaders, fragile yet fierce. But then the silver ship reacted. A bright beam of light cut across the square, sweeping over the humans. Mara ducked behind a crumbling wall, heart hammering. She could feel the heat of the beam nearby, close enough to singe her skin. One of the team members screamed, grabbed, and pulled themselves out of the light. Mara froze, waiting for the inevitable. But the symbol pulses seemed to slow the ship sensors, just enough for them to escape detection. Elias motioned for retreat. "Back to Sector 12, he shouted. Mara didn't hesitate. She ran through the alleyways, dodging shadow figures and avoiding the patrol beams. Her muscles burned, but adrenaline carried her forward. Every step was survival. Every breath a gift. When they reached Sector 12, the group collapsed inside, panting, exhausted but alive. Mara's hands shook as she removed her gloves. She looked at the glowing symbols and then at the others. They had survived their first mission. They had learned. They had adapted. Elias smiled faintly, though exhaustion lined his face. "Not perfect," he said, "but we're alive. That counts. And tomorrow, we push further." Mara sat against the wall, catching her breath. For the first time in weeks, she felt more than fear. She felt power. She felt hope. The aliens were strong, faster, smarter, but humans had courage. Humans had ingenuity. And most importantly, humans refused to give up. Outside, the silver ships continued to hover, silent watchers of a city that was slowly waking up. Somewhere in the darkness, small shadow figures moved, learning, adapting, but so were the humans. Mara clenched her fists. She didn't know what the next night would bring, but she was ready. And as the first faint light of dawn crept over the ruined city, Mara realized one truth: the game was no longer theirs to watch. Humans had entered it, and they would not lose. The next night came faster than Mara expected. Sleep had been shallow, interrupted by dreams of silver ships and shadowy figures. Every sound made her flinch: the hum of the drones, the creak of a ruined wall, the distant whistle of wind through broken windows. Sector 12 felt safer than the streets outside, but the threat was never far. Mara rubbed her hands together and stood, ready to move. Elias gathered the group in the main room, maps and glowing symbols spread before them. "They learned," he said bluntly, pointing at markings showing alien patrol routes. "Last night confused them. This night, they will expect us. They will hunt us harder." His voice was steady, but the tension in the room was thick. Mara felt it in her chest, a tightness that would not release. A woman named Lyra stepped forward, holding a small glowing device. "We can still use the symbols," she said. "But we need to be faster, smarter. They are adapting to our tricks." Mara nodded. Every patrol seemed quicker tonight, more precise. The aliens were learning, and humans had only small advantages left. They moved out just after midnight. Mara's group took the narrowest streets, sticking to shadows, placing symbols strategically along walls, corners, and broken rooftops. The faint glow pulsed like tiny heartbeats, a secret language only humans could understand. The small shadow figures appeared almost immediately, sliding along the rooftops with perfect coordination. Mara's stomach tightened. They were faster than before. A patrol drone hovered low, sweeping the street with a bright, white beam. Mara froze, holding her breath. The pulse from the symbols made the drone hesitate for a fraction of a second, but it was enough for her to slip past. She saw Elias and Lyra up ahead, moving silently, each step calculated. Every second was life or death. Suddenly, a piercing shriek echoed from the building beside her. One of the new recruits had triggered a trap, a leftover alien sensor, hidden in the rubble. Mara's heart leapt. The shadow figures froze, then scattered, converging on the source of the noise. Mara sprinted, ducking behind walls, her hands trembling. She could hear the recruit screaming, but before she could reach him, a small, silver figure lunged from the shadows. Mara didn't hesitate. She raised her plasma cutter and activated it. A high-pitched hum filled the alley as the blade burned through the air. The alien screeched and recoiled, but it wasn't enough. Too many others were coming. The recruit was grabbed, dragged into the darkness before Mara could reach him. She couldn't stop it. She couldn't save him. Tears blurred her vision, but fear sharpened her senses. She ran toward the center of the square, where the group had set up the largest cluster of symbols. Pulsing lights filled the area, confusing the shadow figures and slowing the patrol drones. The aliens hesitated, recalculating. For a moment, humans had the advantage again. Elias shouted, "Now! Move through the center and flank left. Quick!" Mara followed, weaving through the glowing paths. Every step was precise, every breath controlled. They moved like ghosts, human shadows dancing among light, keeping one step ahead of death. But the aliens were adapting fast. A massive patrol ship descended, blocking their escape. Its lights scanned the square, revealing glowing symbols Mara thought had hidden them. Panic threatened to overtake her, but she clenched her jaw. Humans may have been slower, smaller, and weaker, but they had grit, courage, and the ability to think unpredictably. Mara grabbed a symbol from the ground, smashing it into the wall. A pulse of light flared, blinding the sensors for a moment. The ship hesitated. It was enough. Elias yelled, "Run!" They scattered, each member diving into narrow alleys, shadows, and debris. Mara's lungs burned as she sprinted, heart pounding. The silver ship swept past, missing them by inches. When they regrouped at Sector 12, the mood was grim. One recruit was missing, likely captured or worse. Mara sank to the floor, chest heaving. Elias knelt beside her. "They're learning faster than we can adapt," he said quietly. "We can't just rely on tricks. We have to get smarter, stronger. And we have to accept loss. It's part of survival." Mara shook her head, anger rising. "We can't just run every time. We have to fight. We can't let them take everyone we care about." Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with determination. The team looked at her, realizing something important. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about resisting. About sending a message. Humans would not disappear quietly. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Tonight was hard. But we learned. And learning is how we survive. Next time, we plan better. Next time, we hit them where they don't expect." Mara nodded, swallowing back fear. She felt something stirring inside her, a fire that refused to be put out by fear or shadow. Outside, the city seemed calm again, though Mara knew it was a fragile calm. Silver ships hovered silently, shadow figures prowled the rooftops, and somewhere in the darkness, the world watched humans adapt. Mara looked at the faint glow of the symbols they had planted. A small spark of hope glimmered. Humans were small, fragile, and outmatched. But they had courage. They had creativity. And tonight had shown them one truth. No matter how strong the invaders were, humans would never give up. Not Mara. Not Elias. not the others. And the fight was only beginning. The next evening, Mara stood in the dim light of Sector 12, her hands trembling slightly as she traced the patterns on the glowing symbols. The events of the previous night haunted her, the screaming recruit, the relentless patrols, the massive silver ship that had almost trapped them. But fear was replaced by determination. Humans could no longer run. They had to fight back. Elias and Lyra were already huddled over the central map, discussing strategies in low, urgent whispers. "We know how they hunt," Elias said, pointing at clusters of glowing symbols. "They adapt quickly. But we've learned their patterns. We know their weaknesses. We just need to strike where they least expect." Mara leaned closer. "And we have enough symbols?" she asked. Lyra shook her head. "Not enough for a big attack. We'll need to improvise. We have to use the city itself, the ruins, the walls, the debris. Every corner can be a trap." The plan was risky. They would divide into small teams, strike multiple patrols simultaneously, and then retreat before the massive ships could react. Mara was assigned the lead team, responsible for drawing the shadow figures into a trap using the glowing symbols. Her stomach tightened. One wrong move and the team could be lost. Night fell quickly. Mara's group moved through the narrow streets, placing symbols and setting traps with careful precision. Every shadow felt alive, every sound a warning. The air was thick with tension. Mara could feel the eyes of the invaders everywhere, even when she couldn't see them. Then came the first patrol. Shadow figures appeared on the rooftops, sliding silently, moving in perfect coordination. Mara signaled the team. Symbols glowed brightly, forming a confusing web. The figures hesitated, stumbled, and began to follow the paths Mara had laid out. For a moment, it worked. The team moved like shadows themselves, guiding the figures deeper into the trap. Mara's heart pounded with excitement and fear. Humans were small, fragile, and outnumbered, but tonight they had the advantage. Suddenly, a low, metallic hum filled the air, deeper than any sound Mara had heard before. The shadow figures froze, then scattered in panic. Mara looked up and froze. Above the rooftops, a massive silver ship descended, its lights bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at them. Elias's voice came through the comm. "It's bigger than we thought. Fall back now." But Mara noticed something strange. The ship paused, almost as if it were studying the glowing symbols. Its sensors, designed to track humans perfectly, hesitated. It was confused, but not for long. Then the twist came. From the shadows, a new kind of alien appeared. Larger than the small, shadowy figures, with limbs that moved unnaturally and eyes, or sensors, that glowed red. They were different. Smarter. Faster. More dangerous. Mara's stomach dropped. The invaders were evolving. Adapting to human tricks faster than anyone had expected. The team scattered. Mara ducked behind a crumbling wall, heart hammering. One of the new figures lunged at her, its movements precise and terrifying. Mara activated her plasma cutter and swung it just in time. The alien screeched, recoiling slightly, but there were too many. Through the chaos, Mara saw Lyra struggling against another of the new figures. She ran to help, slashing the plasma cutter through the air, forcing the alien back. "Move!" Mara shouted. "We have to retreat to Sector 12. The team regrouped in the narrow alleys, gasping for breath. One member was missing, caught or worse by the new invaders. Mara looked at the glowing symbols around them. They had worked, partially, but the aliens had adapted, introducing a new kind of predator that threatened everything they had planned. Elias's face was grim. "We underestimated them. They're changing faster than we can react. But we've learned too. And humans adapt too." He turned to Mara. "Tonight showed us something important. The fight isn't just about surviving anymore. It's about learning, evolving, and staying one step ahead." Mara swallowed hard. She had felt fear, loss, and despair, but now a fierce determination rose inside her. Humans were small, yes. Fragile. Outnumbered. But they were clever, resilient, and stubborn. And now, for the first time, she realized they had a chance. Not just to survive, but to strike back. Outside, the city seemed quiet again, the silver ships hovering silently above, unaware that humans had begun to fight with strategy, not just desperation. Mara looked at the faint glow of the symbols, the marks that guided them, the small sparks of hope in the darkness. A plan was forming in her mind. A bigger plan. One that could turn the tide. The invaders had grown smarter. Humans would have to grow smarter too. And Mara knew one truth, burning brighter than fear or doubt. The fight was only beginning, and humanity was not finished yet. The city was cloaked in darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the symbols Mara and her team had laid across the streets. Tonight was different. There was no running. No hiding. Every human who remained in Sector 12 had agreed they would strike back. Mara checked her equipment one last time. The plasma cutter hummed softly in her hands. Her heart pounded, but fear was tempered by purpose. We've done the training. We know the patrols. We know the new type of invader, she whispered to herself. Now we fight. Elias gathered the teams in the main hall. Tonight, he began, voice low but steady, we attack strategically. We'll divide into 3 units. Mara, you lead the first. Lyra, you cover the center. The rest flank from the east and west. Our goal isn't to destroy them, yet, it's to show them humans can strike, can think, and can survive. Mara nodded. She glanced at her team. Faces grim, but eyes burning with determination. They moved out silently, slipping into the shadowed streets of the ruined city. Every step was measured, every corner a potential trap. The first patrol approached. Shadow figures glided along rooftops, sensors scanning for movement. Mara activated the first set of glowing symbols. Light pulsed in the streets, confusing the invaders. Figures paused, hesitated, collided with one another. Mara's team advanced, silent and precise, guiding the aliens into the carefully planned traps. Then came the massive silver ship. Its bright searchlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across the streets like a predator. Mara ducked behind debris, heart racing. The aliens were smarter now, and the ship sensors were faster. But the symbols worked. The beams faltered slightly, buying Mara and her team precious seconds. Suddenly, a new alien, one of the larger, red-eyed predators, emerged from the shadows. Mara's team froze. The creature moved unnaturally fast, muscles coiling like a spring. Mara swung the plasma cutter, flames hissing as the blade met the creature. It screeched but didn't stop. Move. Fall back to the next zone. Mara shouted. Her team scattered, weaving between symbols, drawing the predator into the trap. The glowing marks pulsed brighter as the alien lunged, confused by the human strategy. For a brief moment, it faltered. Mara pushed forward, signaling the others to continue. In the center, Lyra's team faced a second wave of the shadow figures. Mara could hear the metallic clicks echoing from above. The humans had to think faster than the invaders, act faster than fear itself. Lyra activated additional symbols, forming a pulsing web of light. The figures froze, then scattered again, revealing a small opening. Mara's heart lifted. Humans were winning small victories. But then disaster struck. One of the flanking teams was ambushed. Mara saw it from the rooftops. An alien ship had descended directly into their path. Panic threatened to take her over. Without hesitation, she led her unit to intercept, activating every symbol along the route, forcing the ship to retreat. They regrouped near an abandoned tower. Breathless, bloodied, hearts racing, Mara looked at her team. "We've shown them we can strike," she said, voice shaking with adrenaline. "But this is only the beginning. We need to plan for more, stronger, smarter." Elias approached, his face pale but resolute. "Tonight proved one thing," he said. "They can adapt, yes. But so can we. Humans survive. Humans fight. And every time we strike, we learn, they falter. One day, that faltering will cost them everything. Mara's hands shook, but not with fear. She looked out over the ruined city, the silver ships hovering silently above, the shadow figures retreating into darkness. Humans were small, fragile, and outnumbered, but they had courage, ingenuity, a stubborn fire that refused to die. The night stretched on, but for the first time in weeks, Mara felt something she hadn't felt since the invaders first came: hope. Humans were no longer just hiding. They were adapting, striking back, reclaiming fragments of their world one daring mission at a time. As dawn approached, Mara and her team returned to Sector 12, exhausted but alive. The city outside was still dark, still silent, but the invaders had felt the sting of human defiance. Somewhere, in the shadows, they would plan, adapt, and strike, but humans would be ready. Mara clenched her fists, the glow of the symbols reflecting in her eyes. One truth had become undeniable: survival was no longer enough. Humans would fight. Humans would strike. And when the time came, humanity would not just survive, they would prevail. The game had changed. The humans were no longer pawns. They were players. And Mara knew, deep in her bones, that the next move would be theirs. The city was quiet, but Mara knew it was the calm before a storm. The silver ships hung overhead like a cold, indifferent sky. The shadow figures prowled rooftops, moving with deadly precision. But tonight, humans were not running. Tonight, they would strike, and they would decide their fate. Elias gathered the teams in Sector 12, his face lit by the glow of the symbols. "This is it," he said. "We've learned, adapted, survived. Tonight, we fight not just to survive, but to send a message. The invaders will remember that humans are not easy prey." Mara checked her plasma cutter, securing it tightly in her hands. She glanced at Lyra and the others. Faces grim, eyes burning with determination. There was no fear now, only focus. Every lesson from the past missions had led to this moment. The plan was simple but risky. Mara's team would lure the shadow figures into the traps using the glowing symbols, while the flanking teams would strike at patrol ships with improvised explosives and disruptions. Elias's group would coordinate from the central tower, monitoring movement and guiding each strike. Precision and timing were everything. One mistake could mean death. Night fell, and the city seemed to hold its breath. Mara led the first group into the streets, symbols glowing faintly along walls, corners, and broken rooftops. Every pulse of light was a lure, a distraction, a weapon. The shadow figures appeared almost immediately. Mara's heart raced, but she forced herself to move with calm precision. Symbols pulsed as she ran, guiding the invaders into preset paths. The creatures hesitated, stumbled, and collided, giving Mara's team the advantage. Suddenly, the largest silver ship descended, its searchlights cutting through the darkness like knives. Mara froze for a heartbeat, then pressed forward. The symbols worked. They slowed the ship sensors, confusing the invaders just enough to buy precious seconds. From the rooftops, the new, larger predators lunged at the humans. Mara swung the plasma cutter, flames hissing as it met alien flesh. The creatures screeched, recoiled, then attacked again. Mara's movements were fluid, precise, every step choreographed by instinct and training. Explosions erupted from the flanking teams. Improvised traps detonated, sending smaller patrol ships tumbling. Mara saw several shadow figures retreat in panic, disoriented by the humans' cunning. For the first time, the aliens were reacting, not controlling. Elias's voice came through the comm: "Now. Push forward. Don't let them regroup." Mara's team surged, driving the invaders toward the center of the trap. The glowing symbols pulsed faster, brighter, a heartbeat that guided humans and misled aliens. The massive silver ship fired a concentrated beam. Mara dove behind debris, as the light tore through the street where she had been seconds before. Dust and smoke filled the air, stinging her eyes. She gritted her teeth and ran, the symbols guiding her safely past danger. One of the new predators lunged at her from the shadows. Mara swung the plasma cutter, connecting with precision. The creature collapsed, screeching, but more were coming. She ran, weaving between obstacles, dodging attacks. Every second counted. In the center of the square, the aliens hesitated, their coordinated movement breaking down. Mara's team pressed forward. For the first time since the invasion began, humans held the advantage, not because of strength or numbers, but because of courage, ingenuity, and relentless will. Elias signaled from the tower. "This is it. Collapse the traps now." Mara activated the final sequence of symbols. Lights flared, creating confusion among the shadow figures and forcing the massive ship to retreat slightly. The humans advanced, pushing the invaders back toward the ruins where more traps awaited. The battle was chaotic, loud, and terrifying, but humans moved with purpose. Mara saw the city begin to change. The silver ships retreated slightly, the shadow figures scattered, the predators faltered. The invaders realized, too late, that humans were no longer easy prey. Hours later, the streets were quiet again. The invaders had withdrawn, at least for now. Mara and the team regrouped in Sector 12, exhausted but alive. The city outside was still ruined, the silver ships still above, but the humans had won the night. They had sent a message: humans would not be conquered quietly. Mara sank to the ground, breathless. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "They'll adapt," he said softly. "But so will we. And next time, humans will strike again." Mara looked out over the city, faint light creeping over the horizon. For the first time in weeks, she felt something stronger than fear: hope. Humans were small, fragile, outnumbered, but they were relentless. They survived, adapted, and fought back. And deep in her chest, Mara knew one truth that the invaders could never understand: humanity did not give up. Humanity fought. And one day, humanity would win. The night had ended. The battle had been hard. But the war was just beginning.